Hey there, brilliant people. So today's question is about intuition and politics. Namely, can intuition help us with politics? So, of course, the short answer is yes, in the sense that intuition can help us with any area of life, because intuition is very much about that part of our system which is supporting us to be more of who we really are. So yes, of course it can help. The question is how. Now, I'm not going to talk about it the way you think I'm going to talk about it. So, because I'm not here to tell you who to vote for, I would encourage you to tune into your integrity and pay attention to that when you're deciding who to vote for, of course. But what that is, that's between you and the voting booth. But politics, when we think about what politics is, the problem is that politics in many ways seems to have this inherent conflict with intuition, because politics in many ways is about forcing other people to conform to what we think should happen. It's not necessarily really about supporting people to be who they really are. At least politics as we practice it currently, that seems to be how it is. So because of that, it would almost seem as though intuition has got no place in politics. But of course, that's not actually true. But it's just that when we are working in this area, whether it's politics or actually anything else, and by politics, I mean, the truth is, if you work in a big organization, there's politics involved at work. So it doesn't always have to be big picture, governmental politics. It can be the politics of family or the politics of work. It's like whenever you have a group of people where everybody is trying to have their will be dominant over other people, that is like a political system. And the tricky thing is that is not how intuition really works. Intuition, as I said, is about helping people be who they really are. So it's more like a mediation system or consultancy, or deciding via resolution rather than by politics. So how are we going to use our intuition in the political area, whatever the area is? And in many ways, that becomes a lot simpler when we start to understand that there is actually these two levels to intuition. So there's my intuition that is just for me, that is just telling me about my integrity and what I need to do to align to my integrity. And generally that is where most of us do best to start, because it helps us improve our lives. We're not really influencing anything else except ourselves, so we can live with that. Whereas once we get into other areas like politics, what we're really looking at there is a co-creation. And the difficulty is that really intuition is, as I said, it's more a process of resolution, because when we're using our intuition, when we're using it across a group dynamic, we're actually looking for the way to proceed that's going to enable not necessarily everybody to get what they want, but to help everybody get what's going to serve them to be more in their integrity. And by doing that, things can move forward. And so that is the difficulty with politics, is that, of course, not everybody even necessarily has a sense of their integrity. And so how are we going to work with that? Well, first of all, your intuition can certainly warn you about pitfalls and sometimes how to navigate around it. And also remember that, yes, intuition is about you being who you really are, but it's also that part of your system that works through pattern recognition. And so one of the things that helps, particularly when we're dealing with something like politics, is to remember that it's about pattern recognition. So when we are working in whatever group dynamic with other people, if those people have a sense of their intuition, in sense of their integrity, which will lead to their, which will support their intuition, if they have a sense of their integrity and they're willing to or open to support other people's integrity, there is an avenue there, a framework there that we can talk things through until we find a way that supports everybody's integrity. The difficulty, of course, comes in when some people are running from their ego, not from their integrity. Because at that point, they're not interested in their impacts on other people's integrity. As long as their ego gets acknowledged, they're happy. So that is obviously problematic. So what do we do there? Well, that's when the pattern recognition side of things becomes helpful. And one of the simple things to remember there is once is a mistake, twice isn't, 3 times is a pattern. So if somebody does something, for example, they break an agreement. It could be a simple agreement like, oh, I'm going to call you tomorrow at 2 o'clock. Or if they don't call you tomorrow at 2 o'clock, well, life happens. We remind them and hopefully we get it sorted. But if the next time they say they're going to do something by a particular time and it doesn't get done, well, then that's not a mistake. It's not a life event. It's something that we need to have a bit of a discussion about, because if they're not someone who's going to be reliable, we need to know. And then, of course, if they then do it a third time, so even after we've had the discussion, it means whether they're conscious of it or not, it's something that they're doing deliberately. Now, I'm not saying that they're doing it deliberately to push your buttons or get at you in some way. I'm saying that they're doing it deliberately because some part of them thinks that that's either okay or it's a benefit to them in some ways. That is a pattern that they have running through their lives. And if you've ever done any work on yourself, or if you've ever tried to give up a habit, you know how much work it takes to change a pattern. So the thing is that if somebody has a particular pattern, you know that that's actually pretty reliable. In fact, some people's patterns are more reliable than what they say. So this is why we want to observe what their behavior is, so that we can understand that that is the pattern. So whatever their behavior is, if it's something that they have that pattern running pretty consistently, then okay, they may be difficult to work with, but at least we know what to expect from them. And so we can figure out how to get around that, or how to work with that within that environment of that particular behavioral pattern. Of course, if the political situation is something like your work environment or whatever, maybe the way to work around it is to simply find a new place to work. But some of these political patterns, we can't just get around because they're our government. And so then the more that we can recognize what those patterns are, the more that we can recognize, well, that's going to keep happening and that's going to take us in that direction. Is that a direction that serves me or not? And if it isn't, well, then you can figure out or start to look at, well, what can I do to try and create a different pattern? So there you are. Intuition and politics. Probably not the video you were expecting, but it's the video that you got. I hope it's of some help, regardless of what sort of political situation you're dealing with, as I said, whether it's family or government or anything in between. And I hope that helps you to remember that you're brilliant.